Okay. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. And this is Carl Weisenberg, and he was born December 16th, 1911, and he served in World War II in the Navy. And we are recording this on November 26th, 2012 in Seneca, South Carolina. I am Anna Hickey, and I am conducting the interview, and there is no relation. So, Mr. Weisenberg, you said you were enlisted in the Navy.
I volunteered in 1941 when the Japanese hit us at Pearl Harbor. I had a wife and 2 children at home.
How did they feel about you going?
Well, of course, the children, they were small. The children were 6 and 4 years old. And my wife said, do whatever you have to do. I said, I want to go. I need to go because I can't stand what those Japs did to us at Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. And I said, I need to do something. I had a wife and 2 children, and I had a good job. I was an auto mechanic. And I had a good job, and I was making good money. And I still said, I need to go.
Were you living in New York at this point?
I was in New York City.
And when you went to enlist, where did you go?
I went to Kingsbridge Road, the Armory in Kingsbridge Road. And I volunteered. I went up there and I said, I want to go in the Navy. And he says, yeah, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm an auto mechanic. He says, we don't need auto mechanics. I said, okay. He says, here, fill out these papers. So I went over to the side and I filled out the papers and I handed it back to him and he said, you'll hear from us. That's all he said. So I didn't hear. I heard from him. This was in December because the Japs hit us December 7th. And I went the same month. I went down to enlist. And when I got home, I said to the wife, hon, I'll never leave you again. After I was away 3 years.
So where did you start training?
I did my boot training in Newport, Rhode Island.
And so when you enlisted, when you told that man you wanted to join the Navy, how long did you have to wait until you started training?
Oh, well, this was in December 7th, the month of December 1941 when the Japs hit us. I went down a week later, a couple of days later, and I told him I want to enlist.
And then when he said, well, you'll hear from us, how long did you have to wait before you heard back?
September of 42.
Oh, okay. So that was quite a while.
I went away in August of 42.
What was boot camp like?
Boot camp?
Yeah, was it hard?
Well, I could take it, anything they could dish out. And they sent me to, I went down and I put up my right hand and they swore me in. And I said, what do I do now? He said, you'll hear from us. A day later I heard from them to come with my suitcase or whatever I had. And I went down to recruiting office in New York City. They said, okay, get me. I had a draft of 20 men because I went in as second-class motor machinist. So I was the highest rank of 20 men.
Wow.
So I took they gave me a load of paper, said, here, take these, go with these 20 men on that train. And we went down to Little Creek, Virginia. And that's where I did my boot training, in Little Creek, Virginia. I was there 28 days. And 28 days, and they sent me by myself to Newport, Richey, Florida, to pick up, to learn all about the ship that I was going to be on. I had to learn the piping of the ship because I was a chief. I was second class then. By the time I got to San Diego. They sent me by train to San Diego. I became a first-class motor machinist.
Okay.
Then I got on board a ship, and I went to Pearl Harbor, and they made me a chief petty officer. I was a chief motor machinist. And I got on board the ship, and I had a draft of 11 men in my crew, and 11 diesel men and 1 electrician was in my crew. And I was in charge of 11 men altogether. The captain of the ship, he was a full lieutenant. He was the captain.
What was the name of your ship?
Huh?
What was the name of your ship?
LCI 475. LCI 475.
And who'd you live with? Did you have a roommate?
No.
No roommate?
No. I lived with my 11 men on board ship. I got on board a ship out of Newport Richey, Florida. I went down to Newport Richey, Florida to learn the piping of my ship. And then from there I went on board the LCI 475 was the number of my ship.
And that was in Florida, or that was in San Diego?
Yeah?
Was that in Florida or San Diego?
Florida.
Florida?
In Florida.
And how long were you on that ship for?
3 years.
And you went to Pearl
I was at Pearl Harbor when we pulled into the links of Pearl Harbor, and I saw the battleship Arizona. The battleship Arizona that the Japs sunk with 3,000 men on board on the battleship Arizona, and it was down in the water. And that's when we really got mad. We said, boy, we got to get these Japs. We're going to kill every one of them. Well, anyway, we got to Pearl Harbor, and from there we went out. I was introduced to the captain of my ship, and I was in charge of 11 men. And I had in charge of the engines. I took care of 8 driving engines and 3 generators on board my ship, and I was in charge of that.
Okay. And what did the 11 men under you do?
What did they do? Diesel work, like me.
Okay. And you were in charge of them? You told them what to do?
I taught them all diesel work because they were all recruits. They didn't know one end of the ship to the other.
And how old were you?
At that time?
Yes.
I was 30 years old.
And were the 11 men, were they all younger than you or about your age?
Oh, they were younger than me. In fact, they were all younger than I was.
And do you remember, where were they from? Oh, you can get that if you need to.
Hello?
Yes, hi. Is this United Way?
No, you got the wrong number.
Okay, thank you.
Is this United Way?
No.
Well, I had 11 men under me. I had an engineering officer. He was a nice guy, but he didn't know one end of the ship to the other. He was a 90-day wonder, they called him at those days. And he didn't, but he depended upon me because he would come down the engine room, but he said, I can't stand it down here, it's too noisy. He wouldn't stay in my engine room. I took care of the engines and everything. And not that he could, but I took care of 8 driving engines and 3 generators, 3 3-cylinder generators. I took care of them. I had my 10 men and 10 diesel men. And they were diesel strikers, they called them, because they were learning how to work on an engine. I was teaching them. I didn't know myself at the time, but I learned fast because I was an auto mechanic. And I knew how to take an engine apart. I didn't have to, my engines ran good all the way. From New York, we went down, from New York, we went down through the battery, through the canal, water canal. I was in water canal when the Japs hit that place, and what did I do? I went through the canal, Coca-Cola in the Panama Canal, and from there I went on to San Diego with the ship that I was on. I was on that ship from the time I left New York until I got out of the service. Wow. And I got out of the service at Pearl Harbor. I got out, I went back to Pearl after 3 years, and I was out, and I went back onto the ship, and we oh God, what's happening to me?
It's okay. What battles did you serve in?
Huh?
What battles were you a part of?
Oh, Guam, Saipan.
What were they like?
Well, we were we fired rockets. We come up to the beach, fire rockets. The Japs wouldn't come out of their caves. We had to take them out with rockets.
And all the time while they were firing rockets, you were tending to the engines?
Oh yeah, I took care of my engines. Made sure that my engines ran all the time. No trouble. And in fact, I had the best running ship of the fleet. And there were eight ships in my fleet.
Okay.
8 ships like mine. LCI, my ship number was LCI 475. 475. That's for landing craft infantry. LCIR, rocket. They tagged us with rockets that we would go up to the ship, up to the beach, fire the rockets to get the Japs out of the way so that the troops could land.
Were you ever scared at any point?
The what?
Were you ever scared at any point?
Scared? No.
No?
I didn't even think about it. I just I did my job. And I was I saw Japs floating by, aircraft, you know, they were shot down by aircraft.
So you witnessed the casualties?
Oh yeah, I saw these Japs floating by, all blown up, you know, with their helmets on, goggles and all, ships, and they were floating by, in Okinawa especially.
Was that hard to see or no?
They were what?
Was that hard to see or
No, no.
did it make you feel like you were there for the right reasons because you were getting work done?
I was very happy to be there and see these Japs floating by because they did a terrible job to us in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
They killed 3,000 men in one ship. They threw a bomb right down the smokestack of the Arizona, and that ship blew apart with 3,000 men in it, and the ship sunk right there. And we saw the ship, the mast sticking up out of the water when we got there.
What would you guys eat?
Huh?
What would you eat on a daily basis? What kind of food?
Oh, good food.
Good food?
Oh yeah, the food was good. And we had a good cook on board. He was an old-timer, and he knew how to cook. And we got good food, plenty of food.
Did you get to talk to your wife and children back home? Could you send letters?
Oh yeah, mail. I sent a letter every day, and she wrote to me, and I didn't get my mail except when we got near a port. The guy would go and pick up the mail that came in. But my wife understood, and I said, I'm doing a job, and if I come home, fine. If I don't, it's okay too. And she says, you do what you want. And I came home, and when I came home, I said to the wife, hon, I'll never leave you again. And I never did.
Oh.
I had her for many years after that.
So, what was the worst experience you had while you were on ship? What was your least favorite thing
Well,
about
I'm trying
it?
to think. I was at Guam, Saipan. Lady is the name of a town. Leyte. Lady, Philippines, in the Philippines. I was in Guam, Saipan, Lady. I was on the water canal, but the fighting was on they were beating the Japs into the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and we came in from the Atlantic side. And but we didn't do no fighting on Lady. I mean, no. We didn't do no fighting after.
What was the worst battle, the most fighting?
The worst was Okinawa.
Okinawa.
Okinawa was we had a tough time there. The Japs we saw the Japs floating by. I saw the Japs all, they came out of the island, out of the hills in Okinawa. The men would pick them off with their guns. Of course, I never shot a gun. I used a gun, but on our way to Okinawa. But
What'd you use it for?
I used it to fire at the aircraft. And I was there in Okinawa. Everybody had to do something because the Japs were really coming out of the hills in Okinawa. And everybody on board my ship, including the ships all around, they were all fighting the Japs. And there was a gun, there was a 75 millimeter automatic gun, and I said to the captain, I went up to the captain, meanwhile the Japs were flying all around us. I said, there's nobody using that gun. He says, I said, can I use it? He said, go ahead. So I had a little Mexican put the what do they call with the bullets in it?
The holster?
Magazine.
Oh, okay.
Took a magazine and put it on there for me, and I was firing the 75 millimeter gun at the aircraft that was flying all around. Never hit anybody, but this was an Okinawa.
You didn't think twice about grabbing the gun?
Huh?
You didn't think twice about grabbing that gun?
Oh no. No, I was trying to hit one of them, but they were flying overhead, and boy, I'm telling you, those things are big. The Zeros that they had. When they fly over your head, you think you're gonna hit you right down there, but boy, they were flying all around us in Okinawa. That was the bad one there. And
how did Okinawa end?
well, we beat them in Okinawa. We beat them bad, and from Okinawa we were there, and all our troops landed at Okinawa. When the troops land, we pull out.
Okay.
To go to the next one, to get the troops, so that the troops could land. We had to fight the Japs to get to land. And in Okinawa, Okinawa is where we got the word to go back home, back to Pearl Harbor.
And that's where you ended?
And at Pearl Harbor, I got back to Pearl, and boy, we were so happy when the captain said, we're going back to Pearl, because we thought sure we were in Okinawa, and our next move was Japan. Honshu was 300 miles away, Honshu in Japan. And we thought that's where our next move is. In fact, that's what the captain said. But we got orders to go back to Pearl Harbor.
And that's when you knew the war was pretty much over?
Oh, well, we didn't know that. We thought sure that we were going back to Pearl to load up again, to get the ships in shape to go out again. But no, we got to Pearl, and I got my orders to go home.
How did you feel?
30 days traveling time, 5 days and 30 days traveling time. I got 5 days to get to where I was going, and then 30 days leave. That's what I had. I had 30 days leave. But I got back to Pearl, and my orders came through for me and a couple of other kids, I don't know who they were, that we were going back to the States. And boy, we were so happy. They're pulling us out of the war. Well, the war was still on when I got on board a ship. Yeah, I got on board a ship at Pearl Harbor, and it took 6 days to get back to Oakland, California. Oakland, California is right outside of San Francisco. And I got my orders right from there to go home, back to New York. Well, of course, that made me feel good. I said, I've had enough of this. And I got, well, at Pearl Harbor, it was a terrible sight to see the Arizona, the ship, battleship, the mast sticking up out of the water. 3,000 men blew apart in the ship.
Did you ever see any dead U.S. men? Did you ever see any casualties from the United States on the USS Arizona?
No, I didn't.
No, that was already finished.
I didn't see anybody, but we got a lot of ships. We sunk a lot of ships. Me and half the crew, the fleet. But we always had to move. We always had to sleep with our Mae West on, our helmet, everything.
What were the sleeping conditions like? Did you have a bunk bed?
Oh no, I had a bunk bed. On board my ship, we all had bunk beds. But the captain, of course, he had a regular bed in his own room.
So when you guys weren't fighting, what did you do to pass the time? Did you have any free time?
Oh yeah, well, while we were underway, we guys would play cards and this, that, and the other thing. And of course, I would write a letter to my wife, telling her how I felt and everything. I wasn't allowed to write anything. Of course, the officer in charge, he had to read my mail because they were censored, you know.
Oh.
We had to write. We didn't have to say anything about how things are, where we were, or anything like that. We couldn't write where we were. And I made it one time I wrote down, I said, we're on our way to Okinawa. Well, that was taken right out of my letter. Crossed right out, blocked out. You can't, I forgot about that. I knew better, but I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
You can't tell them where you're going. especially with the war on. So but other than that, I wrote to my wife every day, and she sent me I got a lot of mail when we couldn't get it out at sea, but we got it when we got to, like in Guam, I got some mail, and in Leyte in the Philippines, I got some mail, and then we went on to Luzon. In Luzon, we came aboard. We came to in Luzon. There's a little island, and they had. Well, there was we came up to the dock.
Okay.
And there was some Filipinos came aboard the ship in Luzon, a little Filipino, and he kept pulling on my T-shirt. I had on a T-shirt, and he kept pulling on that. I said, "What does he want?" And the other Filipinos, I understood, said, "He wants your T-shirt." He had on an old skivvy shirt that was greasy and oily and everything else. I said, "Wait." I said to him, "Wait, stay where you are." I went down to my locker. I came up with I brought up 2 skivvy shirts. Laundered, they were laundered, and I had a half a dozen. I had more than a half a dozen skivvy shirts, but I brought up 2 for him, and I gave it to him, and he kissed my hand.
Oh.
And he still wanted a shirt that was on my back, so I took that off. Of course, it was warm weather there where we were, and I gave him the shirt off my back plus 2 shirts. So I gave him 3 shirts altogether, and he kissed my hand. Little Filipino.
They were nice, the Filipinos?
Because, he didn't have any
That was
clothes.
so nice.
All he had on was a skivvy shirt and a pair of jumper pants or something. But that was at Lady, I think it was. Yeah. No, Guam.
Guam?
No. Luzon. Luzon in the Philippines. From Luzon, we went on to Okinawa. That's where we had the biggest battle. And the Japs were flying all around us. The Japs they were only 300 miles from what's the name of the town? Luzon.
How long did Okinawa last?
We were there half a dozen days, 7 or 8 days in Luzon, in Okinawa. That's where the biggest battle was, in Okinawa. That's where we did all the most of our fighting. And that's where they came out of the hills there. Oh man, the Japs were all over us. But
And you had 8 ships with you at that time?
yeah.
There was 8 ships in your fleet with you? At that time, was there 8 ships in Okinawa?
Oh yeah. There was more than there was a lot more ships than that in Okinawa. I think about it now. I didn't think much of it then, but in Okinawa they came out of the hills, and the Japs, they didn't have any clothes. They come out with little G-string. That's all the clothes they had on, a jockstrap. And the Japs would come out of the hills, their hands up in the air, and our captain and the other ships from the other captains, they sent the officer on on shore to see what they want, to talk to them. And that's, of course, we wouldn't go ashore at all until the island was secure. And the Japs, with their hands up in the air, nothing on but a G-string. They didn't have any clothes. They were living in the caves in Okinawa. They come out of the caves and with their hands up in the air, and I was topside. After I get my ships running and everything okay down the engine room, I would go topside to see what was going on. And I see what was going on. The Japs were all with their hands up in the air. Nothing but a little G-string on. No clothes at all. So the captain sent the officers ashore, all the ships. There were half a dozen ships. They would go ashore and interview them and interrogate them, find out what they want and all that. And they were starving. They had no food. Well, I guess so. Our ships, and every ship gave them some food. But the fighting was still going on, mind you. The war was still on. Let me put it that way. The war was still on. The war ended August the 13th, I think it was. August the 13th.
And what was the month that you were home?
Huh?
What month did you go home?
August. In August 1945.
So when you went home, had the war ended when you were back in New York?
The war ended. I was on my way from Wyoming. I got on board a ship.
Train?
I got aboard a ship to take me from Pearl Harbor to Oakland, California. 6 days on board a ship. And when I got to Oakland, California, I checked in there and they said, you'll hear from us. The next day, they gave me my orders to go home. Not that the war was still on, but to go home for my 30-day leave. I got 5 days traveling and 30-day leave.
So in that period was when the war ended. That's why you didn't have to go back.
The war ended August the 13th. I was on my way out of California. I got on a train in California to head for New York when the war ended. How did I know the war ended? We were all on board this train, troop ship. That's what they were using those days, troop ships. Train. And I got one of the guy who opened the door and he said, the people are yelling. Oh, what the heck are they yelling about? Well, he opened the door and opened the side door, and all I can hear them say is, the war is over, the war is over. August 13th. The Japs gave up. So we all broke out our bottles of liquor that we had, and we all got drunk. But the war was over, and it took me. I got to Chicago. Next day or 2 days later, I got to Chicago, and there from Chicago, all I know is that I had to get to the YMCA to change my clothes. I was filthy dirty. We were all drunk on board the train. And I went to the YMCA, changed my clothes, put on a clean uniform. I was a chief petty officer, so I had khakis. And I got my orders then to 30 days traveling, 30 days leave, and 5 days traveling. And I got on a train in Chicago for New York, and it took me, I think it was 1,000 miles. No, it took me all day to get from Chicago to New York, all day. And why? Because I have no idea. But I got on board a train in Chicago after getting there from California to Chicago. And I got on a train in Chicago for New York. And when I got to New York, of course my wife and my 2 children and my mother-in-law, of course my wife stayed with my mother-in-law. She had a house and they lived together.
Okay.
With the 2 children. I had a boy and a girl. And I got to New York, and I didn't take a subway up to where I lived. I couldn't wait. I took a taxi cab. I took a taxi home from Penn Station, and I got up to the Bronx. My wife lived in the Bronx, New York. And I got up to the Bronx and I had a taxi cab, and there was my wife with the 2 children and my mother-in-law standing right there waiting for me. It was the greatest sight I ever saw. To see my wife and 2 children standing right there waiting for me. Well, anyway, I took my 30-day leave. I wasn't going to give that up. I took my 30-day leave and left the wife with left the 2 children with my mother-in-law. And she said, "Go ahead, do what you want." I said, I took my wife and we got in she never sold the car. I asked her to sell the car that I had, but she never sold it. She learned to drive, and she kept the car. So we went up to Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont. That's where I spent my 30 days traveling around. But I was glad to get home, and although it didn't bother me any that if the Japs hit me, I didn't bother. I was there to do a job, and I did my job.
Yeah.
And I kept my engines running. In fact, I helped other ships like mine. They had engine trouble. They would take me over there in a small boat to one of the ships. He had engine trouble. They took me over in a small boat because I knew more about the engines than they did. And I fixed the engine, and away they went, and they took me back to my ship. But
What would normally be wrong with the engines that you would have to fix?
what?
How would the engines get broken?
Oh, they had injector trouble. They had 6-cylinder engine has 6 injectors, and the injectors would clog up, and they didn't know what to do with them. So I knew how to take an injector apart and clean it up and put it back in the engine. I knew how to do all of that. So that's the only thing I did. Injectors, those diesel engines ran beautifully all the time. Nothing like a diesel engine, because they're better than an electrical engine. Because with spark plugs in there, spark plugs go bad, points go bad, condenser goes bad. But with a diesel engine, all you got is an injector. And you make sure the lines are clear and you keep running. And I kept my engines running. In fact, my ship was one of the best ships out there in the Pacific. I had it running, never had trouble with it. Always kept clean injectors, clean oil, changed the filters. I did all of that, and that's what I did. That's why I joined the Navy, to fight the Japs and keep my ships running. I did that.
After your 30-day leave in New York, what did you do after that?
I came back and I had a couple of days at home, and then I went over to where I used to work. I worked for a big automotive repair shop, and I went to work there again. I only worked there about a week, and then I opened my own shop. I wanted to make money for me and my wife and 2 children, and I did that. I went back to New York, went to see the guys, went over to where I used to work, and I said, I'm going in business for myself. So I had a gas station that needed somebody to run the gas station. I said, that's me, I'll do that. And I took care of his gas station, and I went and got my own gas station. I rented, didn't buy. You don't buy. You rent from Texaco. Texaco company rented me a gas station, and I just.
So were you 33 or 34?
I was 30. I went into service at 30. I came out at 33.
And then how long did you work before you retired? A while?
A long time.
A long time.
A long time.
Yeah. Was it hard to go back into the workforce and be a regular civilian after what you had seen?
No.
No?
No. I knew how to work on engines. I knew engines. That was my life. I was born and brought up on working on engines. And I knew how to work on an engine. I knew how to take them apart and put them together again. I did that. But I went back into, when the wife and I took a vacation. We went away for 30 days, but we were away. I got 30-day leave, but I was away about 12 or 14 days. We were up in New England. And then when I came back, I said, well, I'm going to go to work. But I went to work at this place not for long, I don't even remember how long, but I got my own gas station. I rented a gas station from a Texaco guy. He needed an auto mechanic, and I didn't work for him, I worked for me. And I rented the station, the gas station. And I built up a good business. I had men working for me after a while. I had men, I was paying them a salary to work for me. And I did all right. Then I took on a partner later on. I took on a partner, and I had 7 men working for me. 7 men.
Wow.
3 men running the gas station around the clock, and 4 men in the shop with me and my partner.
Okay.
And we had a nice business. And when the time came for me to get out, I said to my partner, I got to go to Florida. Why? Because my wife felt better. With her hands felt better because she was starting to get arthritis. And I said, I gotta sell out. So he bought me out, and I sold my business, my half of my business, to my partner, and he paid me well. I got $8,500 for my end of the business, and I took my wife, and I said, we're going to Florida to live. And we did just that. I put my house up for sale, and my house was sold just like that. 2 days,
Wow.
My house was sold. Because those days, everybody was looking for a house. And I had a nice house out on Queens Village, Long Island. And
So where'd you move in Florida? Where did you live in Florida?
in St. Petersburg.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived in St. Petersburg for 51 years. 51 years in St. Petersburg, Florida.
And then your kids, how did you come to South Carolina? Did one of your kids live here?
My daughter, her husband got a job here. Her husband worked for Square D. You've heard of Square D. They're on the highway in Seneca right now. Square D. Well, my daughter came here with him, and so we came to visit her, and she says, "Come on in, the water's fine." So I sold out everything. I sold my house and practically everything but my car.
Was this after your wife passed away? Was this after your wife passed away? Or before?
I didn't get what
Did you move to South Carolina before or after your wife passed away?
Oh, no, I lived in South Carolina. Let me think. No, she died in St. Petersburg, Florida. My wife died in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's where I was for 51 years. And one day I came home. I'll tell you quickly about that. We lived in St. Petersburg, Florida. I played golf. I played golf a lot, and I had three other guys, or four of us, always played together. Well, one day I came home. I had breakfast with my friend who was in the funeral home business. I had breakfast with him that morning. My wife was sleeping. So I said, "I'll let her sleep," and I walked out nice and easy. And when I came back, I said to my friend wanted to borrow one of my golf clubs. Well, the golf club was in the garage, in the closet in the garage. And I said, "Well, I'll get it." Well, I opened the garage door with my key, opened the garage door, and her car was still in the garage. That's funny. I said, it was a Friday, and she usually goes shopping, food shopping on a Friday with her sister-in-law. They go food shopping. So I said, "Oh, well, she's probably sleeping." So I went into the bedroom, and there she was in the bed, and I went over to wake her up, and I couldn't wake her up. And that's when my mouth went dry. I called the police right away because I couldn't get any. I started blowing into her mouth. She wouldn't wake up. The police came, and the police called a medical examiner and found out that she was dead. She died at 4 o'clock in the morning, around 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was sleeping alongside her, but I didn't know it. I didn't know she was dead. But she was dead, and she died at 4 o'clock in the morning. She was a wonderful woman.
I'm sure.
She brought up 3 children altogether. I had 3. Two that went to Florida with us, and Linda was born in Florida.
Well, she was born after you came back from the war?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Linda was born after I came back.
Okay.
I had only 2 children when I went away, and when I came home I had 2 children. And then Linda came along in 1948.
Oh.
Linda was born in 48. I came back in 45. So she came along, and so I had 3 children.
That's nice.
But yeah, I guess. What else?
Did you keep in touch when you came back with any of your friends that were on the ship?
No. I always thought of that. Never heard from anybody. One fella came to visit me in Florida when I lived in Florida, because his mother-in-law lived there. So we got together that one time,
Okay.
and I never saw anybody after that.
But during those 3 years, did you form good friendships with guys from all over the from all over the country? Did you meet guys from all over the United States?
You know, I can't hear you.
Did you meet other soldiers from all over the United States?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Navy, all Navy.
Mhm.
I was in the Navy, with no Army.
Yeah. Navy.
I
Excuse
was
me.
in the Navy, and I put in my 3 years in the Navy. And when I got out, I said to the wife, "Hon, I'll never leave you again."
Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Mhm.
In New York City. I was
Okay.
born in New York. I was born on 106th Street and Park Avenue in New York City. And Park Avenue, if you know anything about New York, Park Avenue is where the swanky people live,
Yeah.
but not where I lived. I lived in the push carts, where the peddlers with their push cart sell their wares out of the push carts. That's where I lived. I was born there. And I lived I lived there till 33. When I was 33 years old, I got out of the service. I guess it was about 1930. When I was 34 years old is when we went to Florida. And we lived there 51 years in St. Petersburg, Florida. And my daughter Linda was born in St. Petersburg.
What was your education like? Did you go to high school?
Oh yeah, I graduated from DeWitt Clinton High School in New York.
And then did you go to college?
No,
No.
I went right to work.
Mhm.
I worked as an auto mechanic. Of course, I wanted to be an auto mechanic. I didn't want to be a college professor. I wouldn't know anything about that. But I
Right.
wanted to be an auto mechanic. And that's what I was, an auto mechanic. I had my own shop, and I did a very good business. People enjoyed
I bet.
working on their cars because I treated them honestly. I was an honest auto mechanic, if you can believe that.
Oh, I can believe that.
There's such a thing as an honest auto mechanic, and that's what I was. I treated them right, and I charged them properly. No trouble.
All right, well, thank you so much.
You got everything you
all
wanted?
my questions out of the way. Thank you so much.
Take care.